Okay, this is the second part of your practice test. These are the story problems that are found at the end of your practice test. The first question of the story problem says the formula for speed is equal to distance over time. For speed is in kilometers per hour, d is distance in kilometers, and t is time in hours. First part of the question says, what is the time it will take a car traveling 64.2 kilometers to travel a distance of 112.35 kilometers? So for all of these questions, when you have a formula, the first thing you should do, obviously, is write your formula. Okay? And once you have your formula written, what you will do is you will substitute those variables that you know. So the first one is, it's giving you the car traveling and it's giving you the speed of the car. So right here, we're going to put 64.2, 64.2 as the speed. The distance is given as being 112.35. So we're going to put 112.35 here. And now what we have is we have an algebraic equation where we have a variable and we have everything else we know, and we're going to isolate the variable. And this first part is actually a lot trickier than it should be, because what you have to do is you have to realize that I first have to multiply both sides by t. And when I multiply that side by t, I get 112.35. When I multiply 64.2 by t, I actually treat 64.2 like a coefficient, and it's 64.2 multiplied by t, or 64.2 t. Next thing we're going to do is divide both sides by that coefficient. And when we solve it, we're going to get t equals, 112.35 divided by 64.2 is 1.75. 1.75. So therefore, it will take 1.75 hours, or 1 hour, and since 3/4 of an hour is 45 minutes, you can say 1 hour and 45 minutes, because 0.75 hours is 45 minutes. Okay, the second part to this question says, how far will the same car travel in 15 minutes? And in brackets, I shouldn't have told you, but I did. 15 minutes is 0.25 hours. So the first thing I'm going to do is write down my formula again. And this time, since it's the same car, its speed is going to be the same speed. So I'm going to put 64.2 kilometers an hour, 64.2 kilometers per hour. And I'm going to put the time this time as being 0.25 hours. Okay, not 15 minutes. So here, we're going to multiply both sides by 0.25. And when I do so, the distance it can travel is 1/4 of 64.2, or 1/4 of that, which would be 16.05. So therefore, it can cover about 16.05 meters or kilometers in 15 minutes. Oops, that's not right. There, that's better. It says, next story problem says, three numbers have an average of 3.2. If the first number is negative 6.2 and the second number is 7.6, what is the third number? So if we think about x being the first number, y being the second number, and z being the third number. I know this seems weird because we've never used more than one variable, but bear with me. So x plus y plus z would be the sum of those three numbers. And to get the average of numbers, you have to add those three numbers together and divide by the number of terms, in this case, three numbers. And that will equal your average. So if we think about a formula that we could use for this, we could say the first, the second, and the third divided by 3 equals the average. And since we know that two of the numbers are negative 6.2 and 7.6, I'm going to change two of them. It doesn't matter if it's the first, second, or third. I'm going to change this number here to negative 6.2, and I'm going to change the other one to a positive 7.6. And the only reason I did it that way, instead of putting x, I just want to keep my x variable. You can do it however you want. And therefore, when we simplify this, we're going to have x plus, and if I think about negative 6.2 and 7.6, 6.2 is negative combined with 7.6 positive is 1.4 equals the average. And since the average is given to us, since the average is 3.2, and substitute average for there, And when I do so, I end up with this equation. So the first number, the second number, and the third number, or the first number, the second number, and the third number, if you want to think of it that way, added together and divided by 3 will equal the average. And since the first two numbers add up to be 1.4, and that's negative 6.2 and 7.6, this is our question. So we're going to solve it by multiplying both sides by 3 to start. I'm going to get x plus 1.4 is equal to 9.6. Subtract your 1.4 from both sides, and x will equal 8.2. So therefore, the third number is 8.2. Question 17, I think it's 17 or whatever it is. Zach ordered cases of Toblerone chocolate bars from the internet. He ordered 3.5 cases with a delivery fee of $12.75. If his bill was $39.70, what is an equation that can be used to solve this problem? So, if x represents the cost of one case, first thing I'm going to do is define it because that's what I'm looking for. Right? So x is going to be the cost of a case. And if he buys 3.5 cases, you're going to take that 3.5 and multiply it by the cost of the case and add to it a delivery fee of $12.75. And that will be the total cost, which is given to him as being $39.70. So there's your equation that would represent that situation. 3.5 cases. Each case, we don't know how much the cost of each case was, multiplied by the cost of the case, plus the delivery fee of $12.75 will equal to what you spent. So we're going to remove the delivery fee first from the total cost. So those 3.5 cases really cost $17.05. Is that right? Oh, I better do it on calculator. So $39.70. It's actually the other one. $12.75 equals $26.95. Good thing I used a calculator because I would have got the wrong answer. Divide both sides by 3.5. So instead of having 3.5 cases, you're going to have one case, and that will be 770. So x equals 770. And since we defined x as being the cost of a case, therefore the cost of a case is $7.70. The next question says the pentagon and square have the same perimeter. What is the value of x, and what is the non-algebraic area of the square? So since the perimeter A, I'll just put it in here, A is equal to perimeter B, or the perimeter of the pentagon is equal to the area of the square, then the perimeter of A would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides that are 2x minus 1.5. So we're going to take that 2x plus 1.5, or minus 1.5, and multiply it by 5 to get the perimeter around here. That is going to be equal to 4 sides of 5x plus 0.75. Okay, so we're going to solve this algebraically. We're going to use distributive property to expand both sides. We're going to get 10x minus 7.5 is equal to 20x plus 3. If we expand using distributive property, we should get that. I'm going to, I get x's. Haha, oopsie daisy. I think I made a mistake here. I got a negative value. Oh well. I don't think anyone will notice, will they? I'm going to first subtract 10x from both sides. I'm going to get negative 7.5 equals 10x plus 3. Subtract 3 from both sides. And 10x will equal 10.5 negatives, I think is where we're at right now. Divide both sides by 10. Well, maybe not. Maybe we're okay. X equals, if I take my calculator, 10.5 divided by 10 equals 1.05 negatives. And that's our answer for x. Okay, that's solving for x. So once we have that, it is negative 1.05. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that expression and I'm going to substitute. This is really funny because it's a negative distance. Substitute x as 1.05 negative. Simplify that to be negative 5.25. Multiply it out. And now you're going to get negative 4.5 as being the side length. This is interesting. Actually, the area is going to be positive. Wonderful. So instead of saying this, since x is negative 1.05, I could say the side length is negative 4.5. And to get the area of the square, you would multiply length times width, or since it's a square, area of a square is equal to side squared. So area of a square is equal to negative 4.5 squared. Take your calculator. What is negative 4. Oh, clear. Negative 4.5. Oh, hello. Negative 4.5 squared would be times itself. Negative 4.5 squared is 20.25. So therefore, the area is 20.25 units squared. Okay, and your last story problem question says a jar contains 21 more dimes, which are 10-cent coins, than quarters, which are your 25-cent coins, but their values are equal. How many dimes are there in the jar? Create algebraic expressions for the missing parts below, and then create an equation that will allow you to solve for x. So the first thing I gave you was that x is actually equal to the number of quarters. Now, if there was 3 quarters, and a quarter is worth 25 cents, you would have $0.75 or 75 cents if you had 3. So what you did is you took the number of quarters you had, 3, and you multiplied by its value to get the total value of the quarters. But since this is actually not 3 because we don't know how many quarters we have x quarters, we're going to take x and multiply it by 0.25. And when you multiply a variable by a number, you treat it as a coefficient. So therefore, the value of the quarters would be taking how many quarters you had and multiplying it by 0.25. So that expression will represent the value of the quarters. Now, since it says the jar contains 21 more dimes than quarters, if there are x quarters, and there are 21 more dimes than quarters, then if I added 21, that would be the number of dimes. Right? So x plus 21. If x is the number of quarters and there's 21 more dimes, there's x plus 21 dimes in that jar. And if a value of a dime is 0.10 here, I'm going to take that number and I'm going to multiply it by how many dimes I have, and that is going to be the value. Right? And that's how we start our thing. We create all of these expressions that represent the value and the value of dimes and value of quarters. Now, since it says the value of dimes and the value of the quarters are equal, therefore, the value of the dimes and the value of the quarters are equal. So the value of the quarters is going to be equal to the value of the dimes, right? So the value of the quarters is equal to the value of the dimes. So I'm going to expand this using distributive property. Okay, and now I have variables on both sides. I'm going to remove it on the side that has the least amount. And I'm going to get 0.15x is equal to 2.1. Okay, hopefully you follow along with that. And once we have that, we're going to divide both sides by the coefficient. And hopefully this works out okay. 2.1 divided by 0.15 equals 14. So if we go back up to here, how many quarters do I have? I have 14 quarters. How many dimes do I have? 14 plus 21, which is 36. 35.